Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at another terrible case with you. For 7 days in January 2006, Richmond, Virginia was terrorized by Ricky Javen Gray and Ray Joseph Dandridge, who murdered at least 8 innocent people. At first, their motive seemed to be robbery, but the brutality of the killings made it look like a more sinister motive. Now let's take a look at what happened. Richmond, the capital of Virginia, is one of the oldest cities in the United States, with history dating back to the 17th century. The James River flows through downtown Richmond, making the vibrant city seem even more beautiful. But some things happened in that town that are far from beautiful. On November 5, 2005, a passerby found the body of 35-year-old Trevor Terrell Gray in a shallow grave on Brookside Avenue in Washington, Pennsylvania. Now, Trevor had married Ricky Javen Gray, a 28-year-old ex-convict about 6 months before. The two lived together in a house owned by Trevor's family. Ray Dandridge, Ricky's nephew, had moved in with them after getting out of prison on October 26, 2005, where he had served over 10 years for armed robbery. Trevor's parents said the couple often fought, and on the day her body was found, Ricky had visible scratch marks on his forearm. But the police didn't consider Gray or Dandridge suspects at the time. Trevor's mother, Marna Squires, believed the police thought Trevor died from a drug overdose and didn't investigate the case thoroughly. Although her death was ruled suspicious, no homicide investigation was started. A week after Trevor's body was found, her parents kicked out Dandridge, who then moved to West Philadelphia with his father. On December 23rd, Gray left the Washington home to stay with his grandmother in Arlington, Virginia. Dandridge joined him on Christmas in 2005. On December 31st, 2005, 26-year-old Ryan Carey was attacked in front of his parents' home on North 25th Street in Arlington. He later identified the attackers as Gray and Dandridge. According to the autopsy, Ryan suffered severe beating and stab wounds to his chest, neck, and arms. The assault left him in a coma for 2 weeks, and he permanently lost the use of his right arm. But there is more than that to this story. On New Year's Day 2006, musician Johnny Hott walked up to his friend Brian Harvey's home with his young daughter on his shoulders. Brian was an ex-bandmate, but the two kept in touch and stayed close. The Harvey family lived in the Woodland Heights district, a historic neighborhood with tree-lined streets and views of the James River. Johnny was early for the chili party the Harveys were throwing to celebrate the New Year. It was 1:40 p.m. and the party didn't start until 2. Knowing his friends wouldn't mind, Johnny walked through the front door, which had been left open. The house was ridiculously quiet, and as Johnny entered, he was greeted by a thick cloud of smoke. He ran to the kitchen, thinking something might be on fire, and called out for the Harveys. Unable to find the source of the smoke, he ran outside and yelled for a neighbor to call 911. Dozens of police officers and firefighters arrived soon after. Friends of the Harveys, arriving for the party, stood shocked as they watched the firefighters and first responders swarm the home. The fire department quickly extinguished the flames and began searching the house. One lieutenant noticed more heat coming from the basement door and ran down the stairs through thick smoke. At the bottom, he found a woman's body. Thinking she was suffering from smoke inhalation, he carried her to the front yard to perform CPR, but made a shocking discovery instead. There was a sock in her mouth. At first, responders thought she had tried to cover her mouth with a sock to filter the smoke, but they soon realized her hands and ankles were bound. The woman was 39-year-old Catherine Harvey. As the EMTs realized they couldn't save Catherine, the crew inside continued searching the basement for the rest of the Harvey family. They first found the body of 4-year-old Ruby Harvey, her ankles and hands bound with tape like her mother's. The firefighters stopped searching as they realized they were in an active crime scene, trying not to disturb it further. Police investigators and the medical examiner made it to the crime scene. In the middle of the debris, they found Brian Harvey, his limbs bound in a hog-tied position. Nearby lay 9-year-old Stella, also bound. They also found 2 hammers and 2 knives, as well as empty wine bottles that may have been used as accelerants. There were no signs of a break-in, but Johnny Hott mentioned the front door was open when he arrived, and the side door was unlocked. Several items, including jewelry worn by the victims, were missing. Brian and Catherine's wedding bands had been ripped from their fingers. The medical examiner on the scene examined the bodies of the Harvey family. He noted that Catherine Harvey had sharp force injuries, including stab and incised wounds to her neck. The youngest daughter, Ruby, also had injuries on her throat. Brian was hit 6 times in the head and had 8 slices across his neck, resembling a sawing motion. Stella, like the rest of her family, had similar injuries. It was also discovered that Stella was still alive as the house burned. Her cause of death was listed as smoke inhalation and blunt force trauma to the head.
Lawyers for the man convicted for his role in the brutal murders of 2 Richmond families on New Year's Day nearly a decade ago appeared before a 3-judge panel today as he tried to get his death sentence overturned.
The entire family had suffered stab and incised wounds and were bound, beaten and bludgeoned. Richmond detective Lisa Beatles, who worked the case, described the scene she witnessed at the Harvey home. She said, "Firemen and police were supposed to be tough-skinned superheroes. I saw people that I knew for 20 years sitting on a fire truck with tears running down their face." The Harveys were well known in their Woodland Heights neighborhood and the city of Richmond. The father, Brian Tabor Harvey, was born in Danville, Virginia, and was a talented musician with a teenage spirit at 49 years old. He was a singer and guitarist in the band Energy Crisis and worked on computers for the Henrico County school system. His wife, Catherine Elizabeth Harvey, was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and partially owned World of Mirth, a local favorite children's store. The two got married on December 1st, 1990, and had 2 daughters, 9-year-old Stella Ann, born in November 1996, and 4-year-old Ruby May, born in July 2001. The Harveys were artistic, athletic, and loving, and were deeply loved by their friends, family, and community. Johnny Hott, their friend and former bandmate, was the first to arrive at the scene and was initially a suspect due to his presence. There was no sign of forced entry, and the location of the bodies confused the police. Friends and family revealed that the Harveys often spent time in the basement together, which suggested that the perpetrator might have been someone they knew. As we already mentioned, Johnny and Brian remained close despite their band's separation. They had even gone Christmas caroling together shortly before the murders. The lyrics of a song by their old band, House of Freaks, caught police attention as they seemed eerily similar to the murder scene. But it was later revealed that Brian had written the song, and detectives cleared Johnny eventually. With Johnny cleared, police feared other suspects might still be at large. It wasn't until a 911 call came in that investigators made a solid breakthrough in the case. On January 6, 2006, the police got a call from a Chesterfield resident concerned about her daughter's friend, 21-year-old Ashley Baskerville. The caller suspected that Gray and Dandridge, who had stayed at her house and were Ashley's former and current boyfriends, were involved in the Harvey murders. The Tucker home was situated in a different part of Richmond, away from the upscale neighborhood of Woodland Heights, where the Harvey family lived. When officers arrived at the Tucker residence, they were met with a familiar scene. Inside, they found the bound, beaten, sliced and suffocated bodies of 21-year-old Ashley, her 47-year-old mother Mary, and her 55-year-old stepfather, Perciel. Perciel was discovered in the living room, stabbed 5 times in the neck, with duct tape covering his face, from his chin to his nose. Mary's body was found in the master bedroom, with 2 stab wounds to her neck, and duct tape covering her face from her chin to her eyes. Ashley's body was located in her bedroom on the floor, her neck also sliced, and duct tape covering her face from her chin to her nose. A shopping bag was taped around her head. All 3 members of the Baskerville Tucker family were found dead, gagged, and bound with tape in their ransacked home. Perciel and Mary had their throats slashed, and all 3 suffocated due to duct tape wrapped around their heads. Ashley also had a plastic bag over her head, secured with duct tape. Perciel and Mary Tucker had been together for over 19 years, having met when Mary's daughter Ashley was just 2 years old. Perciel, described as a quiet man, worked as a forklift driver, but had a passion and talent for baking. Mary was a devoted churchgoer, an active member of a missionary society, and visited the elderly regularly. The Tuckers lived in the Swansboro neighborhood of Richmond, which is an area known for its high crime rate. Despite this, they had built a life there, and were loved and admired by their friends. However, their daughter Ashley faced a lot of challenges from a young age. By the age of 10, Ashley was running with a dangerous crowd, and her life got worse as she began experimenting with drugs, and eventually selling them by the age of 12. Parents struggled to get to her, and eventually they decided to involve the Virginia Department of Child Services. Ashley spent her teenage years in and out of shelters and treatment programs before being incarcerated just 2 months after her 18th birthday. Police immediately noticed the similarities between the victims at the Tucker home and those at the Harvey residence.
Brian Harvey, Catherine Harvey, who grew up in Virginia Beach, and their two young children in 2006. And we want to warn you, these details about their murders may be disturbing to you. Police found the family of four in their burning home on New Year's Day, bound, beaten, and stabbed with their throats cut. Gray is also linked to the deaths of four other people in Richmond less than a week later, but he was never tried in that case.
Bindings were used on all 7 victims, and the medical examiner confirmed similarities in the stab wounds and slashes on the necks of Purcell, Mary, and Ashley Tucker with those of Brian, Catherine, Stella, and Ruby Harvey. But there were also solid differences. The neighborhoods where the homes were located were different, with the Tuckers living in a high crime area compared to the Harveys' upscale neighborhood. Additionally, the scene at the Tucker home appeared much messier, which was the sign of a more intense struggle. Another difference was the racial background of the families, with the Harveys being white and the Tuckers being black. Despite these differences, investigators managed to make a breakthrough. They found an extremely crucial item linking the two attacks. Brian Harvey's gold wedding ring was discovered on a chain around Ashley Baskerville's neck. Following this lead, police focused on finding the men seen with Ashley, Ricky Gray, and Ray Dandridge. In addition to all this, Mary and Purcell Tucker's Chevrolet Trailblazer was missing from their home. When photos of Ricky, Ray, and the missing vehicle were spread across the internet, it eventually led to a crucial tip from an old man named Roy Mason. Mason recounted a home invasion and robbery involving Ricky Gray, Ray Dandridge, and Ashley Baskerville, who had forced their way into his home, initially pretending to ask for directions, then threatened him and his wife. During the robbery at Roy Mason's home, Ashley actively participated, taking a gaming console and going through belongings, despite the pleas of Mr. Mason, to spare him and his sick wife. Eventually, the thieves showed mercy and left the couple unharmed. Leveraging Ashley's connection to the suspects, police convinced a female 911 caller to contact Ray Dandridge's phone, hoping to track their whereabouts. Ray answered the call and accidentally revealed their location, leading police to a home in Philadelphia, over 250 miles away. Richmond police collaborated with Philadelphia detectives to surround the home where they saw Purcell and Mary Tucker's missing Trailblazer parked outside. On the morning of January 7, 2006, the SWAT team took action. Upon entering, Ray Dandridge attempted to flee through the back door but was quickly arrested. Meanwhile, Ricky Gray was discovered hiding in the basement behind a furnace, holding a power drill and violently resisting arrest. Concerned he might provoke a lethal confrontation, the SWAT team forced him without injury and took both him and his nephew. About an hour after their arrest, Dandridge confessed to killing the Tuckers and Ashley Baskerville. 12 hours later, Gray asked to speak with a detective and provided a detailed 3-page confession. He described using a kitchen knife and claw hammer to kill the Harveys and expressed remorse, saying, "I don't believe sorry is strong enough. None of this was necessary." In later confessions, Gray admitted to beating his wife Traver to death while Dandridge held her down, took out the Tucker Baskerville family, and attacked Ryan Carey.
You choke her out and you kill her with split insurance money, which I thought he took it as a joke, and told him that there ain't nowhere in the world that that'll happen like that. If anything, you'll be here right with me, laughing and joking, but he was serious about it, and I think the night after that, he actually did it, woke me up, threw a pipe at me, some gloves, and said, "Come on," and ran down the hallway, and I was waking up, so I was still so asleep, trying to figure out what was going on. By the time I realized what was going on, got up, ran after him. He had jumped in the bed because his wife's bedroom was down the hallway, and he had started hitting on her, beating her up. So that's how that happened.
But who were these people? Ricky Javen Gray was born in 1977 in Arlington, Virginia. From a young age, he was already labeled as hyperactive and disruptive in school. His difficult home life, marked by physical and verbal abuse from his father and molestation by his stepbrother, worsened his already insatiable state. Similarly, his nephew, Ray Joseph Dandridge, faced academic difficulties and was diagnosed with a learning disability, though there were no reported instances of child abuse in his history. A forensic psychologist later described Ray as socially inept and easily influenced, often following Ricky's lead as he saw him as his role model. Despite the warnings from Ray's father to stay away from Ricky, The two spent a lot of time together with Ricky, usually taking the lead in their endeavors. In their late teens, both men found themselves in the middle of criminal activities, which led to their arrest in 1995 for a series of armed robberies in Northern Virginia and the D.C. area. While Ray was released after 3 years, he was shortly arrested again, this time on federal drug charges. Ray Dandridge, in exchange for a 5-year sentence reduction, helped investigators in solving another case. By January 2005, Ricky Gray was once again a free man. Around this time, he met Trevor Terrell, and the two got married. At first, Ricky tried to integrate into society after prison, even trying his hand at telemarketing and getting an electrician's license, but he struggled to adjust. Trevor's mother, Marna, noted that Ricky seemed constantly on edge, as if expecting an attack at any moment. Soon after their marriage, Trevor talked to her mother and said she was unhappy with Ricky and wanted a divorce. She wanted to kick Ricky out of their home. Around the same time, in October 2005, Ray Dandridge was released from prison for his federal drug charges. He immediately looked for his uncle Ricky in Pennsylvania. Despite not having seen each other since their arrest and trials, Ricky welcomed Ray into their home as he tried to get his life back on track, a decision that would have devastating consequences for Trevor and her family in the years to come. Around November 1st, 2005, Trevor went missing. 5 days later, Trevor's body was found strangled and beaten next to a tree next to a car lot. As already mentioned, Ray left for Philadelphia to stay with his father, while Ricky fled to Virginia to stay with his aunt. They wouldn't reunite until Christmas night, just a week before the Harvey murders, when Ray joined Ricky in Virginia. Once in custody for the Harvey and Baskerville Tucker murders, Ray said his uncle was the leader in their robbery schemes. Both men confessed to the crimes in a cold, matter-of-fact manner. They recounted how, in early November 2005, Ricky and Trevor had a heated argument about their marriage. As the fight got worse, Ricky told Ray to restrain Trevor while he choked and beat her with a lead pipe. Ricky admitted to killing Trevor because he had grown tired of her. After disposing of Trevor's body near the car lot, 2 months later, on New Year's Eve, Ricky and Ray targeted a man named Ryan Carey for robbery. Despite Ryan's compliance, they brutally attacked him, breaking off 2 knives in his body. Ryan survived, but suffered severe injuries, including the loss of use of his right arm and extensive scarring. The next day, Ricky and Ray contacted Ray's pen pal from prison, a girl named Ashley Baskerville. Ashley, who had recently been released from prison herself in March of 2005, had flirted with Ray throughout their time in prison. However, upon meeting up with Ray and his uncle Ricky, she began a romantic relationship with Ricky instead. While walking around the Woodland Heights area of Richmond looking for a house to target, they came across the Harvey home. Meanwhile, Brian Harvey headed to a New Year's Eve event at the Doubletree Hotel, where his band Energy Crisis had a show. Catherine and her daughter Ruby spent the night at home and had a quiet evening in, while Stella was at a New Year's Eve sleepover with a friend. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Brian returned home after playing a 4-hour set with his bandmates, looking forward to the party they had planned for New Year's Day. As they prepared for the party the next day, running items in and out of their home, the Harveys left their front door open sometime after 9 a.m. As Ricky, Ray, and Ashley were walking through the neighborhood, they noticed the open door. They decided that this was the house they were going to rob. Ashley remained in the car as the watchman, while Ricky and Ray entered the home carrying weapons. They assured Brian and Catherine that as long as they got what they wanted and everyone stayed calm, no one would get hurt. Yes, tragically, the Harveys cooperated with the men, as they believed that if they complied, they wouldn't be harmed. Ricky tied up Brian, while Ray went upstairs to search for items to steal. However, a knock on the front door caught the robbers off guard when a friend arrived to drop off the Harveys' oldest daughter, Stella, from her New Year's Eve sleepover. Catherine, led by Ricky at knife point, went upstairs to get her daughter. The family friend noticed Catherine's odd behavior, but didn't suspect anything serious. Catherine just mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Once Stella came, the men tied up Catherine and her daughters as well. Ricky and Ray then attacked the family using knives and hammers. After stripping Brian and Catherine of their jewelry and taking items like laptops, they took a basket of freshly baked cookies from the kitchen. Upon returning to the basement, Ricky realized that the little girls were still alive. He then brutally bludgeoned them again with a hammer. Afterwards, Ricky and Ray used wine they found in the house as an accelerant and set the house on fire, spreading most of the wine in the basement where the Harveys' bodies were found. In their confessions, the men admitted to robbing Roy Mason and his wife 2 days later.
Was it both of you that killed the Harvey family?
Well, he said I hit him. I hit the mother. I hit the father and stuff with the hammer, and he went hit the mother and the kid. But they said that's not what killed him. They said suffocation killed him. He said because he had we put socks in their mouths and put tape around them, and evidently the panic and stuff made them choke on the socks and things. So that's what actually killed him, they say. So it wasn't the hammer blow.
Didn't they have their throats slit though as well?
Yeah, I think the father. I did slit the father's throat first. Yeah.
Did the children's throats get split as well?
No, not that I remember.
So, what was going through your mind the entire time that the killings were taking place of this couple and these two children?
How did we get here? All through the junk, everybody, and like I said, it was more of us. There was also talk about I'm always trying to hold them back and be quiet and skimmish. So I was just, trying to get it through. When I had to cut the guy's throat, I realized I ain't do a good job. Like he said, because he had to come back through him with the hammer and hit them with the hammer. Now I think about it, it was his throat. I did cut the father's throat. So it was sort of a daze. Not wanting to be there, just going through the motions.
Did it bother you at all watching the children die when it happened?
I didn't see it. I walked away.
Did you ask him not to spare the children or anything?
Yeah, I did, but he said he had to, and the girl, and then was, like I said, he was always looking like he was, he knew more and stuff, so I just left them alone, and try to keep them calm and get them all out of the situation, but it wasn't going right then. He came in and he had a reason. Then it seemed a logical reason. The people seen his face and stuff, so I couldn't argue with him, and I just left him at it.
Following this robbery, Ashley suggested her own parents' home as the next target, specifically her stepfather's. She was unaware that Ricky and Ray were planning to kill her as well. They used Ashley as a prop in their robbery of the Tucker home and taped her hands and mouth before invading the home in the middle of the night and carrying out the brutal attack. Ricky Gray's trial commenced on August 17, 2006. Despite his confession, he pleaded not guilty. Attorneys did not contest any of the established information during the trial and did not call any witnesses to the stand. Their lack of alternative strategies suggests they didn't pursue a diminished capacity or insanity defense. Throughout the proceedings, Gray showed no remorse or empathy, even as prosecutors described him as a cold-blooded killer. Prosecutors charged Gray with 5 counts of capital murder in the Harvey killings, including 1 charge for killing more than once in a 3-year period, 1 charge for committing more than 1 killing in a single act, 1 charge for killing in commission of a robbery, and 2 charges for killing a child under 14 years of age. It may seem odd that the Commonwealth first pursued convictions in both family murders separately, making sure Gray's fate was decided before moving on to Dandridge's trial. This strategic approach likely aimed to secure convictions against the ringleader, Gray, first. If Gray's first trial failed, the Commonwealth could then proceed with charges related to the Baskerville Tucker murders. The trials of Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge were emotionally charged events. In Gray's trial, newspapers reported on the brutal killings of the Harvey family, with particular emphasis on the savage murders of 4-year-old Ruby and 9-year-old Stella. One juror was brought to tears, and others were visibly shaken. Despite Gray's plea of not guilty, the jury took just 30 minutes to deliberate before returning a guilty verdict. Gray received a life sentence for the murders of Brian and Catherine Harvey and the death penalty for the killings of their daughters, Stella and Ruby. Ray Dandridge's trial followed a month later. Like Gray, Dandridge also pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor described Dandridge's actions winding a roll of tape around a cardboard tube to illustrate how Dandridge wrapped the victims' faces. This graphic display caused distress to the family members of the Baskerville Tuckers, some of whom left the courtroom. DNA evidence consistent with Dandridge's was also presented, and a recorded call he made from jail pinned him even more. Faced with the death penalty, Dandridge made a last-minute plea deal and pleaded guilty, receiving a life sentence in prison. Despite their confessions, neither Gray nor Dandridge were charged with the murder of Treva Terrell Gray. Her parents, understandably, still wanted justice for their daughter. Both men also pleaded guilty to the aggravated wounding of Ryan Carey and received an additional 25 years in prison. For many years, Dandridge was considered a suspect in the December 18, 2005, murder of Cheryl Warner, a resident of Culpeper County, Virginia. However, no charges were brought against him. Cheryl Warner, a legal secretary and mother of 3, was brutally killed in a manner similar to the Richmond spree killings, although a gun was used in her case. Despite Ricky Gray being indicted for her murder in 2008, the charges were dropped when investigators discovered that his cell phone was active in Pennsylvania at the time of the murder. This evidence raised doubts about his involvement. However, an inmate at Northern Neck Regional Jail claimed to have heard details of Cheryl's murder from Ashley Baskerville, which suggested that Ricky Gray was indeed involved. The inmate provided specific details about the crime that were not publicly known, such as the fenced front yard and the presence of a dog. According to the inmate's account, Ashley described how she and Ricky followed Cheryl home from a gas station, and Ricky then forced his way into her house, pretending to need help with his broken-down car. This testimony, although solid, was undermined by the cell phone evidence that placed Ricky in Pennsylvania at the time of the murder. Cheryl's murder remains unsolved. In 2017, a video was released showing Ricky Gray apologizing for the deaths of the Harvey family in a completely different demeanor than during his trial in 2006.
We're hearing from him for the first time, and he's apparently apologizing for the brutal murder of the Harvey family in Richmond 11 years ago.
So I had to be of my respect. One can only hope that they are willing to accept my deepest apology.
Well, that recording you just heard was released by Gray's attorneys. They argue his life should be spared, saying he only committed the murders because he was on drugs. Drugs he started taking to numb the mental pain of being abused and sexually assaulted by family members when he was a child. A U.S. District Court judge has denied Gray's lawyer's request to delay the execution that's planned for next Wednesday, but the governor can still step in and stop it.
This apology may offer some small comfort to the victims' loved ones, but cannot erase the trauma caused by Gray and Dandridge's crimes. In his final moments, Ricky Gray refused a last meal or words. Despite efforts by his attorneys to present mitigating factors such as childhood abuse and drug addiction, his appeals were ultimately denied, and he was executed by lethal injection on January 18, 2017.
He is scheduled to die by lethal injection at 9 this evening at the Greensville Correctional Center. Gray's lawyers argue he should have been given leniency during that sentencing phase of his trial. They say his actions for the gruesome killings can be traced back to sexual abuse from his childhood.
Dandridge, on the other hand, is currently serving his life sentence in the Sussex State Prison. We've come to the end of today's video. Do you think their punishment was fair? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. Until next time, bye for now.